Cool. So welcome to it's only our second episode in this series of Mums Talk Sex on the We Are Unlimited podcast. And I've got another very, very exciting guest today. Her name is Sama. Have I pronounced that correctly? Sama Morningstar. And she is a womb healing specialist at Lunar Wave Womb Awakening. Welcome, Sama.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
So,
and also I'll just add too that Luna Wave Womb Awakening is sort of an older version of what I'm doing. So online now you can better find me at Womb Centered Healing Temple. The Womb Centered Healing Temple is my latest online creation. So.
Okay, my apologies there. We'll make sure that all the correct links are correct links are in the show notes, and we'll be able to make sure that people that want to connect with you definitely have the resources and tools to be able to do that. So, right, I think everybody's burning with questions, just as I am burning with questions. But before we do, what part of the world are you actually living in?
I'm in Northern California, in Hot Springs country.
Okay, cool. Right, so womb healing. I've done a very small amount of womb work a long time ago, and it was very much, I was just coming out of that very new mummy phase. Like, my son was not even 12 months, and it's like, who am I? What am I meant to be doing in the world now? And what is life for me now, and what does this whole thing mean? And we dipped into a little bit of womb stuff, but I want to hear it from you. Like, what is womb healing, and what's it all about? How do you help people?
Well, you know, the questions that you mentioned that were big for you right after your son's birth are very central to womb-centered healing. Our soul purpose, our reason for being here, all can be traced back to the experiences that we had in the womb, our experiences as mothers and giving birth to other humans, as well as creative projects, and that direct connection that we can find to spirit and to our soul through the womb itself. You know, a lot of spiritual and self-help, personal growth practices focus on centers of connection that are a bit higher up. Often you've heard of mindfulness, so a lot of focus on the mind and the connection between the through the crown and through the third eye to spirit realms. Many of them also focus on the heart and the connection between the heart and our emotions and our wisdom and the spiritual guidance that we might get from heart-centeredness. The work I do is centered in the womb, and there's some spiritual, you can find traces of that spiritual connection through the womb in most traditions around the world. There's even some, like in Sanskrit, there's an energy center, or actually it's not really even an energy center. It's not one of the chakras, but it's a place that's considered to be your direct connection to your individuated God self. And that's called the Purusha, which is considered to be just below the navel and 2 inches below the navel and back towards the spine. Guess what's also there? The womb. and in Asian, you know, like Chinese medicine and Japanese medicine lineages, and especially hands-on body work type practices, the origins of those practices came from Hara healers. Okay, so those lineages all stem back to practitioners that connected with the hand placement right on the hara, or the belly, right over the womb, for uterus owning humans, and right over that same area in those who don't have a uterus but have all kinds of other powerful physiology in that area. And then we all have a powerful energy source there that connects to our spirit directly, and our individual connection with the divine and our individual divine flavor. And these Hara healers would place a hand there, and they wouldn't move that hand. And they would sense everything about that person on all levels, physiologically, spiritually, emotionally, and then they would begin the healing process. They would diagnose and heal just through one hand placement on the heart. Now, this is a lost art for lots of reasons. We could go into a long story about how these, hands-on healing has evolved over the years, but that little bit just shows you how powerful this area is. We can connect directly to our own soul and the spirit realm, as well as, the womb and the uterus and our reproductive organs, whether we have a uterus or not, are an important vital sign. The health and well-being of our reproductive organs are an important vital sign for the health and well-being of our whole body physiologically. So if something's not quite right with that part of our physiology, it's a really strong signal that we need to look at the overall balance of our overall health. And so I call my work biomystical. So we look at the biology of a person and what might be working or not working, and that becomes a doorway and a symbolic map to what's going on for the person in their other realms, emotionally, spiritually, and like that.
Cool.
So,
no, you did 100%, and I was just getting like energy shivers as I was listening to you speak, and you know what it's like. Well, I know what it's like when I haven't connected to a certain part of myself in a little while, and something is like calling me to that. Like I was getting that feeling as you were speaking, and my guess is a lot of the listeners today as well. Their conscious mind is listening to what you're saying, but I think that they're also feeling this calling from this part of ourselves. So I know we haven't prepped for this at all, but is there any sort of small little exercise that you can take us through to just connect with that part of ourselves before we move into the rest of the conversation?
Absolutely. So one of the very first things that I usually share with people is what I call womb listening. And it's very simple. It's simply bringing our attention and our receptive awareness and that listening quality. And I'm not just talking about ears for auditory listening, but how we can listen with our whole body, all of our senses, and all of our, not only physical, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, but our extra senses as well. So clairaudience, clairsentience, all of that. We can bring all of that awareness with simply, I like to show this hand mudra. If you place your thumbs together and your fingertips together, it makes sort of a triangular or pear-shaped shape between your hands. And you can place that on your belly with your thumbs at your navel and your fingertips down at your pubic bone. And that creates a window into your womb space. And it also aims the caring for and taking care of and giving energy of your hands that are so often directed outwards to other people. It aims that energy inwards directly towards our womb space. So we can take a moment with our hands in that position and take a few deep breaths, feeling the breath coming all the way down to your pelvic floor. See if you can feel the breath expanding into your pelvic floor and into your belly, and feeling it expanding underneath your hands. And as you exhale, feeling your attention traveling down your arms and in your hands towards your womb space. And continuing to breathe, feeling the vital energy of Mother Earth traveling up through your pelvic floor into your womb space, nourishing your womb space. Breathing that up, letting it flow through you. And exhaling, bringing your attention down through your body, through your arms, through your hands, to your womb space. And you can take several more deep breaths and open all of your senses. Imagine all of your senses expanding with each inhale. And with each exhale, relaxing any tensions or restrictions to receiving wisdom, guidance and information from your womb space. And just continuing to breathe and allowing yourself to receive any insight that you receive as you open yourself to this connection with your womb space more and more. And you might notice emotions arising, and that's very common. One of the first things that people often experience when connecting with this space is tremendous grief, because it has been so long neglected and often abused, and then we're not having permission or time or space in our lives to process that. In fact, we're supposed to just ignore it and get on with business as usual, right? And so when we start to pay attention and bring our awareness there, one of the things that can come up is grief, and all the different aspects of grief, which includes rage, sadness, a whole spectrum of emotions, numbness, just to name a few, depression. All of these things are part of grief, and giving ourselves space and time to process that is really important. It's one reason why many of us just, when we start to connect with that, just say, oh, I don't have time for that, and just sweep it back under the rug, right? And so, and that's why, especially for new moms, because the process of gestating and birthing a baby really activates and makes us aware of our womb in a powerful, powerful way. And it can often, the childbirth itself, as well as gestation, even conception, all of those processes, breastfeeding, can really make us aware of hidden emotions that have been sort of stuffed down in there, and suddenly you're all opened up and the baby comes out and everything else that was in there with it, right?
Yes.
It can be quite alarming. And, with the rigors of new motherhood and the constant re-stimulation of that emotional flow that is designed that way to be able to be emotionally bonded with the baby, it can be very disorienting and challenging if you don't have practices in place or support in place to support you to process that. And that's a big part of why a lot of moms feel somewhat traumatized by their birth experience, is that oftentimes it brings up this old material that weren't prepared for.
Yeah, so anyone that just is listening to this, and if you did just have an emotional reaction, like we're there with you right now. I've certainly experienced this myself, and I'm sure it's okay for them to reach out to you, Sama.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, or myself if you can't get to Sama as well, because this was what it was like for me, was like this massive release of all this stuff that I just didn't even know that was there. So,
yeah, and I have a lot of free resources online to initially connect and get support. So don't hesitate, and I'm quite available for connecting with online people that listen into
awesome.
these talks. So
yeah, we don't want to leave you hanging as well. So we was just sending you love, and that we'll give you the resources that you need to reach out if you need to. So thank you for taking us through that exercise as well. Like I said, it's been some time since I've actually done any kind of womb connecting exercise, so I really appreciate that. Now this show is about sex and mums, and I really wanted to, and I work a lot with mums as a success coach, and I'm a relationship coach as well, but I'm not a sex therapist, and I really want to extend this conversation to a wider perspective. So I see a lot of mums, and I went through this myself as well, of maybe losing our libido, and feeling like it's kind of all our fault. And what would you say to women that are finding themselves in this place where they just don't have any kind of desire? They feel like they should be wanting to have a higher libido, and they've got all this stuff going on. And what would you say to them?
Well, the first thing that I would encourage women in that situation to do for themselves is to validate their feelings of low libido, that their sexuality, their womb, is in that state for a valid reason, or probably a whole host of valid reasons. And the idea that we should be sexually available despite all the valid reasons why we might not be at any given time is an invalidation of those very wise inner feelings and processes in our body, mind, and spirit. And so healing that invalidation that society has sort of intrinsically established, invalidating women's inner experience, especially around our sexuality. The most immediate remedy for that wounding that's constantly happening around our sexuality is to notice when we've internalized that invalidation and we're telling ourselves the story, I should be sexually available, even though I have all this other stuff going on, and there's a whole long list of valid reasons why I'm not. I should be, and therefore something's wrong with me. And saying, wait a second, that's not true. What's actually true is I have a whole list of very valid and important things that need to be addressed in order for me to be able to be fully in my sexual blossom, right? So that's the first thing.
Yeah, and look, this is a very, very powerful conversation. I can feel this this connection of coming home that some women might be feeling for the very, very first time as they realize that that realization is almost like the seed of a huge tree of personal power that will grow, you know, within that person as they ask themselves these questions and give themselves the time and space to find out, well, what does this mean for me and everything. Is there anything that you would like to talk about? I can tell you're a very intuitive woman. Is there a particular message that you'd like to send out to anyone who might be listening? You know, I can ask questions, but I'm just kind of like putting the floor over to you for a second.
Well, for me, one of my biggest devotions recently is to sort of validate our intrinsic desire for pleasure, and how and to really inquire about how much we invalidate that desire for pleasure, and sort of have this belief system that if we're going to be serious, if we're going to be adults, if we're going to be responsible, then we have to set pleasurable things aside and focus on business. And it's not going to be pleasurable because business and pleasure don't mix, and that motherhood is a hard job, and that there might be belief systems around motherhood in general, that especially sexual pleasure doesn't really go with certain ideas that society has about motherhood, and that we may have internalized that I feel just aren't true. I mean, the whole reason we became mothers in the first place, one of the reasons, or one of the things that made us mothers, was this big act of pleasure. I hope that in that conception process that mothers were having big pleasure. That's how it's designed. We're supposed to be having big pleasure when we conceive, right? If we're not, there's the beginning of it, right? And so that pleasure is the creative impetus for everything. If we look at that as a model, if we look at conception as a model of how things begin and how things continue and how we can be healthy and vibrant. So I talk about this with my clients all the time. When we're experiencing pleasure, like for example, orgasm, but it doesn't have to be orgasm, it can be other kinds of pleasure in life. Our body produces a gas called nitric oxide that's nicknamed the pleasure gas or the God gas. We also experience a big explosion of it at orgasm. We experience a big explosion of it when the sperm and the egg connect. When conception happens, there's a big explosion of nitric oxide there at that moment. And there's also a big explosion of nitric oxide when people have near-death experiences. So these are all times when nitric oxide has been measured in big explosions, but then also smaller amounts of it are being produced anytime we're experiencing smaller pleasurable or, experiences. And this gas is short-lived. It only lasts a little while. So it's not like you can have an orgasm and you're good on nitric oxide for a long time. You're not. It gets used up. And what it does is that it makes all of our organs function more efficiently and better and more vibrantly. And it makes us healthier for as long as that nitric oxide lasts. And it also neutralizes stress hormones in our tissues. And I feel that the buildup of stress hormones in our body from being in chronic fight and flight mode and having our nervous system chronically in that mode and producing those stress hormones on the daily and on the minute and on the hour, every day and every hour, that's the cause of much of our suppression of our organs functioning not at optimum, and then eventually disease and illness and injury. Okay, so the remedy, the biggest healing thing that we can do for ourselves is to experience regularly, to cultivate a regular practice of experiencing pleasure throughout the day, every day. I'm not saying having an orgasm every minute of every day, although if you can manage that, great. But I am saying noticing and appreciating and fully allowing yourself to experience all the little pleasures throughout the day. Your shower, the hot water, how you're massaging the oil or lotion on your skin afterwards, your facial care regime, your hair brushing, all the ways that you care for your body that stimulate little tingles of pleasure throughout your body. Just walking, taking a step and placing one foot in front of the other on the earth and feeling that energy of Mother Earth's vital nourishing of us coming up through our feet, breathing air in each moment. So as many times as you can throughout the day, connecting with the pleasures of being alive.
Absolutely. And, I found that, we're talking about creation and business, and I love to work with mumpreneurs. And, some women they're still in it, like they've got babies left and right, and everybody wants a piece of mum. And I remember exactly what that was like. I'm going to talk about two things here. So the first, I'm going to talk to mums who aren't in it anymore, and maybe they're in a state of business. And I'm always asking people to connect. I think there's different parts of ourselves, and they all want different things for ourselves. And connecting to what our heart and soul is calling us forward to create in the world is always fun, and it's always pleasurable, even when it's not pleasurable, if you know what I mean. Like there's this energy that you get from being on the path that you're being called towards. So yeah, anyone listening that thinking they're having to be serious and business is serious and stuff like that, I would call them to look underneath and see, is there something else that's, calling to be expressed out in the world through you, and what is that? And for the mums who are still in it and who are like, maybe they're in business, and maybe it will take you a whole day to just send an invoice because you've got toddlers and babies and everything like that. What Sama has just said is so vital. Is like taking those, I would call them bliss bites, whatever, for me, and I still do it, fresh flowers in the vase, an oil that I love to smell. It's these little things that signify to us, hey, here I am, and I have my own magic and my own presence, and just to kind of nurture that a little bit. And it doesn't take much to connect with that.
Right. It can be as simple as looking around the room to, like, for example, this lamp that you see in the background. I find the curve of the lampshade quite pleasing to the eye, and the carving on the body of the lamp quite pleasant. Just noticing that for a moment, or noticing the artwork hanging on the wall, or even just simple things about life that are beautiful that are around you, the trees, the sound of the birds, the sound of the rain, just those simple things, and taking a moment to consciously receive the pleasure that's available everywhere all the time, and making receiving and experiencing that pleasure a central focus, a devotion, if you will, to our own, to receiving from life, because we get so focused on giving, and we forget to receive and give to ourselves.
Absolutely. Speaking of taking in our surroundings, your necklace is beautiful, and I'm finding it really distracting. Is there a story behind it or anything? Is there a reason why I'm attracted to your necklace?
Yes, let me see if I can give you a close-up view here in the camera. If you can see there's a mermaid made out of shells and with butterfly wings sitting on a seashell, and then there's these lovely raw freshwater pearls, I believe. This is the only piece of jewelry my husband has ever given me as a gift. He knows I'm not a big jewelry person, but we shop at a particular thrift store, and the manager was leaving, and he connected with her at one point when I wasn't there, asking her what she was doing, in her retirement from working there. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to make jewelry." And he asked her to show her the pieces. So this is a local friend that we'd become close to in shopping at her store, and she had made this piece, and my husband saw it and said, "Oh, that's for Sama," and bought that for me, I think last year for my birthday or something like that. And it's significant today, particularly because I'm not a big jewelry person. I'm very functional. It tends to fall off. So I need to be able to move around and do all the things that I'm doing, and I don't tend to often put jewelry on. But I just had a session with somebody who's supporting me, and talking to my ancestors, and I have a particular ancestor that is really supporting me right now. And the main message was to really do things that are just for me. And if that means I put on my dragon cloak, just walking around the house or going in town, then that's what it means. And shopping for things that give me pleasure. I have a massage client who comes, and she wears a dragon suit. She has this body suit with like dragon spines down the back of the hood and down all the way down the back of the suit. And I think it might even have a little tail. And I'm like, I need one of those, and to just have that pleasure and fun of wearing your dragon suit all day, even if no one sees you, because it's fun. And that's my devotion. That's the next level of my devotion to pleasure, is wearing my favorite necklace, even when I'm just at home taking care of business, especially then, because then I'm feeling my pleasure on a moment by moment basis.
Well, firstly, there's this weird dragon energy going on at the moment. I don't know what it's about. My daughter Sophie is dragon mad, but I have a wonderful, wonderful friend who we had a wonderful dragon session, had this incredible vision, this royal blue dragon behind me that I feel is a presence that I have, always. So it's interesting. And you very much made an impression on me when, as soon as you turned up on the screen, I was like, oh my goodness, look at this woman. And there was the necklace, and I just imagine that you're always like this. So you're fully embodying whatever it is that you're embodying. And it's your birthday today, is it not?
Yesterday was my
yesterday.
birthday.
Oh, okay. So. Well, happy birthday for yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what should we, talking about wounding, how are the ways, you have touched on it, but how are the ways in which that we have experienced wounding in our wombs, either as an individual or as a collective?
Well, I can speak from my personal experience. My mother got pregnant with me at the age of 17. And when she asked her boyfriend at the time what they would do if she got pregnant, he said that would be her problem. she dumped him right then and there, but I was already conceived. Okay, so that moment right there, I was already conceived, and my father was taking zero responsibility for my conception. That's an example of a collective wounding that we all feel in our wombs, where the lion's share of the responsibility for our fertility and for caring for new life that's birthed from the womb is placed on women, and that men aren't sharing that responsibility in an equal and significant way for the most part. Now, there are many, many men that do share that responsibility, but they have probably fought against within themselves an internalization of this collective way of being that says it's not their responsibility. And they might have received a lot of training from the women in their lives that had to point out to them, look, you can't get away with this. I'm not going to allow it. Thankfully for those women who have found their voice and ability to speak up and ask for what they need. So that's one. Now that started even before for my mother, when she started menstruating for the first time at 10 years old. Nobody had explained anything to her, and she thought she was going to die.
Wow.
And she went to school wearing 3 pairs of underwear and didn't tell anyone, because there was this whole attitude of secrecy. And nobody found out until her mother found her soiled underwear in the laundry a week or so later, and then had a very cursory talk with her about, this is okay, here's some pads or whatever she gave her. But she still didn't explain to her that she was fertile and could now conceive a child and how that might happen. She didn't know that that was the case, even when she was fooling around with her boyfriend, whom she'd been with for several years, and this had been going on, and receiving mixed messages from her mother. You know, there's the whole dichotomy of the virgin and the whore that my grandmother was really playing with to the extreme. That, you know, you were supposed to be so virginal that you didn't need to have these things explained to you, and yet the only way you got power was to be this sexually alluring person all the time, and enticing men into your sphere with your sexuality. And so that created this combination of ways of being for my mother, and for all of her sisters as well, that created a lot of unplanned teenage pregnancies in my family. And so she had to figure out for herself what was going on with her fertility. And there was so much secrecy and, imperative to be this virginal person, that she hid me from awareness. She didn't tell her mother that she had found out that she was pregnant until it was too far along for her mother to take her for an abortion in Mexico. This was back when abortions were illegal in California. And she knew that her mother would take her for an abortion in Mexico. And so she kept me hidden. So this is a deep blueprint in me that I've worked with to heal, that it's not safe for me for my existence to be seen and recognized and known about. And so I talk about womb wounding, not just about the wounding that we experience to our own wombs, but it starts earlier than that. It starts when we're in our mother's womb and all the things that happen and led up to our conception. It even starts when our mother was in our grandmother's womb, because the egg that made us was present in our mother while she was in our grandmother's womb.
Yeah.
And so any traumas or difficulties or emotional stress or strain that our grandmother was experiencing influenced the DNA in the egg that made us. And likewise for our mother, when we were developing in her, every emotional stress or strain, even minor adult emotional stress and strain, is huge for a developing fetus. And that's why I'm such an advocate for the full luxurious support of pregnant mothers, that in any way that we can, create that women can create that for themselves, or insist that their family and loved ones and partners give that to them, that's going to save our species
Yep.
from. Yeah.
I agree with you as well, and I think if I had a magic wand, if I could just fix one thing with a wave of my magic wand, it would be around how women are, I don't know what the word is, but how we're seen by men, you know, in the world, and then also how we design our urban environment to support that a lot more. I remember just being so shocked. I've always been sort of an achiever, and my life was very successful until I had children, and then just being so shocked at what I was up against in the world. But nevertheless, here we are, and and this is going out to mothers. What can we do now for ourselves? I suppose those of us who may have children moving forwards, those of us who already have children, what is it that we can do? How can we play our part in more of a collective healing, I suppose, healing of what has happened, and also prevention, evolution of the way women and childbirth are perceived in the world? What can we do?
Well, I feel like the most effective and efficient thing is to start to devote ourselves to the practices that I just talked about. Okay, the womb listening, and starting to really listen inward for how to take care of ourselves in a deeper and deeper way, and really listen to that guidance from our soul in our wombs and implement in our day-to-day lives is huge. And that guidance will take us on a journey of healing past traumas, healing whatever happened while we were gestating our children. And when we do that, that translates into the children healing. Okay, even so time becomes irrelevant when we're listening to the womb, and when we're connecting with our soul through the womb. We can, go into spontaneous or planned meditations and re-experience whatever trauma, might have seemed small for the mother, but big for the fetus. And we can re-experience that and bring our resources that we've learned since then bring our wisdom, our vitality now to that past experience and shift that. And we can notice that change almost immediately, especially if our children are young, but still if they've grown even and out of the house. So retroactive healing for past hurts and wounding is very powerful if we're connecting through the womb. And we can do the same for our ancestors and go back and be our ancestors' guardian angels and spirit guides, just as they can be for us. And so, because we have an umbilical cord, an energetic umbilical cord connecting us back through the generations and forward, so that you hear talk of 7 generations. That comes from some Native American traditions that say, live for the 7 generations back and 7 generations forward, that everything you do is beneficial to all of those generations back and forward. And so we can devote ourselves to living our lives in that way and receiving guidance through the womb that will let us know at each moment of every day what that is.
It's a very, very powerful place to find yourself in once you connect to who it is that you are, and what is it that I'm here for, and what is my own kind of magic, and how do I wield that in the world. We just about come to the end of our time here, but what are the clients that you see, what and clearly they've got a whole range of stuff that's going on for them, which are more sort of symptoms of this underlying stuff that they've got going on. But what are those surface level symptoms that they come in to see you for?
Well, a lot of clients come to me with a lot of suffering in the menstrual cycle, perhaps infertility, perhaps a lot of pain or secondary symptoms, body aches and pains, menstrual cramps and pains, excessive bleeding, acne, headaches, all these kinds of typical things that we're taught to just sort of take as par for the course as women, when actually these are all signs of overall health imbalances that are needing to be addressed. Because when our womb is not functioning properly and within a healthy and pain-free way, we're not supposed to be having pain every month. We're not supposed to be bleeding for more than 4 days. We're not supposed to be bleeding excessively. That's a sign of ill health, and that there's some change that needs to be made. And it's just as important as if you were bleeding from a limb that had been wounded, and it needs to be tended to, and you need to stop everything until you've stopped bleeding. And this is something that most people aren't aware of, and where doctors will tell you, oh, you're fine, and women are bleeding, way too much, and then that causes all kinds of other health problems. And so there's lots of variations on that, and then of course there's traumas that they've had, whether it's abortion or rape or sexual abuse, relationship issues. I mean, it runs the gamut. And actually right now I'm really focused on a group program that I've created called the Biomystical Womb 13 Moon Apprenticeship. And it's a 13-month program. And we go from preconception, working with our ancestral council, looking at our soul purpose for our life, all the way through conception, gestation, and birth that we experienced coming through our mother's womb, all the way through our childhood, our adolescence, our coming of age, our initiation into sexuality, all of our sexual experiences, our own childbirth experiences, all the way through to our motherhood years, our enchantress years, which is a phase sort of towards as motherhood is starting to wane in its demands of us as our kids get older. Suddenly we are asking the questions you're talking about of what's my real purpose? What am I really supposed to be creating? I've witnessed my ability to create this other human being. If I can do that, I'm capable of creating anything I want. And that's when the enchantress comes online and says, I'm going to enchant this world to be like I want it to be. And this is what I am going to do. And so activating that enchantress time and preparing for it if we're not there yet, and then preparing for our wisdom years, for menopause and our wisdom years, where women become exceptionally powerful. And our society has taught us otherwise. And there's a lot of things we can do to debunk those myths that society has ingrained upon us and come into our full power in those wisdom years. So this apprenticeship program goes through our whole life cycle, regardless of where we're at, and gives us all the opportunity to, all the apprentices, the opportunity to explore all of this and reinitiate ourselves or prepare ourselves for initiation into these powerful phases of our feminine power.
Wow. So those people who are listening to this and are just feeling themselves called to find out more about that program. So this is something that you're offering at the moment that people can connect to you for?
Yes, we've just started the first round of it. So there's some really unique opportunities this year to join in at even on full scholarship for those who are willing to participate in the development of the program, because this is the first round of it and I'm writing a book about it. So I'm welcoming people to come in as case studies and contribute writings about their experience of the program for use in the book. So it's a unique opportunity to join, and I'm still accepting applicants at this time. So people interested can go to wombcenteredhealing.com and find the page for the Biomystical Womb Healing Apprenticeship.
I'll make sure that that exact link is everywhere that this podcast goes out, because that is an extraordinary opportunity. And I can just tell by our conversation today that I hope that this message connects with the right people that can bring them to you, so they can go through that incredible apprenticeship. Like, I just know I can't imagine how powerful it will be, and I'm just kind of blown away that this opportunity is there. So I really, really hope that some people take advantage of that opportunity. We're going to have to wrap it up. I feel like we could talk forever. I don't know if you'd be willing to come back sometime, maybe talk about the Enchantress years, because I know that I think that is very much something that a lot of my audience will be interested in. I suppose it's part of the phase that I'm in at the moment. Would you be up for another conversation sometime about that?
Absolutely. I would love to.
That would be so cool. All right, so I'll make sure that our listeners have the very links that they need to get in touch with you, Sama. I can't thank you enough for being where you were when I put the call out to have some guests come on to this show. You've affected me just with your presence and your energy, and I'm very, very grateful and inspired. So,
well, thank you. It's really been a pleasure to join you on the show, and I look forward to doing so again. Thank you so much for inviting me and accepting me on your show.
Of course. Well, thank you. Thank you, Sama.